street. That would be an inappropriate anyways, but yeah, they're asking people to come into interview and have no testing, assessment experience whatsoever. They're asking them to make these assessments. They're asking them to make these questions up, and they have no background in education whatsoever. And I can talk to that firsthand. I know that from experience, and I'm willing to sit with anybody that would like to talk to me about that more, because it's a travesty what's happening. It really is.
Anybody else? Okay, he's pointing over there. I wasn't prepared to speak. I wasn't planning on speaking. As a teacher in a different district, I feel a little nervous about speaking on this issue. On the other hand, I have a perspective that a lot of parents, other parents, don't have. As an AIS teacher, I was called upon to proctor my peers, which meant I had to sit in their classrooms and watch to make sure they didn't cheat last year. Because God knows that's what we all want to do. We want to cheat on these tests. I had to give test modifications for the students with IEPs, which really just means give them more time to take a test that they can't take usually, or do it in a separate location. I did makeup tests for the kids that were absent, and then I was called out twice to score the tests. I pretty much saw every test at every level, math and reading, from grades 3 through 6. My children could do well on these tests. I don't see any value in these tests. I really don't. The questions are confusing. Parents don't get to see them. I don't think the school board gets to see them. We're not even supposed to talk about them. We had to sign that we wouldn't talk about any specific questions. But it's like aliens, like you were saying with English, it's like aliens that didn't even understand anything about literature are making up these tests. They're the most bizarre questions. They don't ask about mood or personification. They ask which line, oh, I'm going to get in trouble now. They ask the kids to flip flap. This is the central theme. Which line best exemplifies? It's bizarre. It's not, I don't understand it, and the amount of time that children are being asked to do this. And I'm sorry, but a third grader last year, there's kids that are 7 years old in third grade. The kids that started when they're young, to expect them to sit for that long, just because they can do it. My kids could do well on this test this year. They've been prepared all year long. You know, bless their teachers, they've tried to make it interesting. I know my kids could get 4s, but should they? Should I ask my child to sit for that amount of time to fulfill this requirement of this meaningless garbage? I'm sorry, it's upsetting. I don't think that, I'm really struggling with this because I am a rule follower. But on the other hand, you have to speak up for what's right, and I don't think it's right to just do it because you're supposed to, or your teachers. I worry about my children's teachers not getting their good scores, but on the other hand, as a teacher, and I have a lot of friends that are teachers, we don't care. I personally don't care about my SLO score. I hate that my kids have to sit through these tests. It upsets me. I think it's abusive to them. I don't think it does them any good. Are there good things in the Common Core? Yes. Should a person be able to answer the question asked? Which is what my remedial children struggle with all the time. You ask them a question, they answer everything but the question you ask. That's in the Common Core, yes. They need to be able to do that speaking before they can do it in writing. Should kids need to be able to conceptualize math? Yes. But the way it's being approached is wrong, and the testing is the area that really scares me and is really upsetting. I don't know.
If I could just piggyback on that for 1 second too, because these tests were supposed to give us an idea of how our students would perform on the Regents in high school. And as good educators, most of us know that scaffolding is the way to go. And that means you start small and you build up. It seems idiotic to me that we give them a 3-day test to prepare them for a 1-day test. That makes no sense. Why don't we sit them down for a half an hour, and then the next year maybe they have to sit down for 40 minutes. It's ridiculous. How is that an indicator of how they will do in high school?
And
it doesn't make any sense.
I was honestly shocked to discover that my children were doing practice tests because because all their unit tests in the math and the ELA all year have been based, from what I could gather, on the state test. So I really, what? You're doing practice tests? You've been doing practice tests all year. But that's, I'm sorry.
I just find it kind of remarkable that how many times have you heard testimony, and how many times have you heard money? We are cheating on kids and our special area kids, our kids with special needs. I am also a teacher here, and I can't talk about it, but my son is struggling. And you were kind enough to sit down with me and talk about these things. And anybody that knows me knows I'm an emotional person. But my son came home with his fingers chewed because of the level of anxiety. This is not a coincidence. So you really need to sit down and rethink what's important for the future of New Hartford.
I just want to say something quick, because first of all, I think it's awesome that this room is so filled and we're talking about academics. Because the only time this room is this filled, we're talking about sports or something else. I love it. What I want you all to realize, and some of you may, we as the board have been hearing these stories all year, and we have been trying to focus on this, and Catherine, I hope we can attest to this, that we are always asking Vince and the teachers, what do you need? What can we do? So I don't want you all to get the impression that we're just sitting back, you know, high up on our whatever, saying, oh, you know, we just do what the state tells us to do. We have been, I think, really trying to work with the district, because I'm not a curriculum guy. We all depend on the teachers to tell us what they need. And we try to Hartfordize and not take the cookie cutter approach and try to massage it and make it something that is more acceptable in Hartford. So I just thank you all for coming out, but I just wanted to say that because I don't, and if there's ever intimidation, someone said there's intimidation.
Yep.
Let us know.
Yep.
Okay, seriously.
I've been personally
Because
intimidated.
it's the same thing, we hear it with sports. Everybody knows this is going on in the locker room, how can the board not know? You gotta come and tell us, because we wouldn't tolerate someone being intimidated, so.
I'm Cheryl Allen, and I teach 5th grade at Miles, and I'd like to invite you to come into my classroom on a test day. If you don't know what it's like, and you don't have an elementary student, I will open up my classroom, and there are a lot of teachers who feel the same way, especially at the elementary level. Come watch what they go through on a test day. When they take a math test for 2 hours, 5th graders sitting trying to take 16 question test for 2 hours. Come watch, and then you will feel the passion that these parents feel, because it's painful for me to watch these children. I have Sue's child, I have Tom's child, and I go home and cry at night for them. I cry for what they go through trying to succeed, and they don't all the time, and a lot of my students don't succeed, and I'd say to them, forget the score. Let's look at what you do right. But come watch their faces when I hand back tests that they have worked 2 hours on and they get a 1 on it. Come, I open my classroom. I invite every one of you to come and sit with me, come and sit with any teacher I'm sure that's standing here would invite you in to watch what goes on when we're getting ready for tests. I'd love for you to come and see how, I mean, I've been teaching in this district since 1985, and I was Louise's student and George's student, and I was inspired by them, and Bob Jones and Jerry Pittaresi. We never did this, and I got a great education. I went on, I got a master's, I did great. My children went through here, and they're all pursuing beyond masters. My youngest is in college, but my oldest two are heading for PhD. They didn't have this, and they did great. And what we used to do as classroom teachers was great, and it's not anymore. And I'm so sad about that. And what I have to watch these kids go through, it makes me want to retire as soon as possible, because I ache for them. Not for me, because that APPR score, it doesn't mean anything to me, because I don't feel it's based on anything that is important. I don't get to ask the kids anymore what they're doing on the weekend or how their day was, because we gotta go, we gotta go. So come in and watch what these kids go through in kindergarten through 6th grade. Come join us and see, and then you'll be impassioned like these people to make it to make changes. Go to the state and say, we can't do this to our children.
It's my turn to speak as a parent, okay? I'm Ed Fleming, class of 79. Not only, yeah, this is great, how you doing? I wasn't the best student, but we were still co-champs, yeah.
I second that.
Yeah. Claudia and I graduated. I want to tell you that as a parent, I not only hear what you're saying, I live it every day. My 3rd grader, he's a 9-year-old, and sprinkling some autism with him, okay? His mother and I have spent years with all kinds of professionals and programs getting him out of his shell. He didn't really speak much until he was about 4. And we came back here because of New Hartford and its scholastic greatness. He started mainstreaming in 1st grade, okay? Started beating all these targets and everything else, out of his shell, socializing, doing all kinds of great stuff. You really wouldn't have known that he had any issue at all. He's a wonderful boy. Starting in 2nd grade, he began to have difficulty, as you can imagine. This year, the discussion with his teachers is he's doing this with his hands. He's doing this with his shirt. He's not talking to kids. He's entering rooms in inappropriate fashion. He's becoming what he was. And it's because he feels less than normal. We work 2 hours a night. We don't go any more than that. I mean, 2 hours is enough for a 3rd grader for homework. It's way too much. But we go 2 hours and we break it up during the afternoon and in the evening. And he does great in some things. Spelling, man, he's great. The multiplication tables, he's great, man. We get all that stuff. When we start getting into the higher standards, quote unquote, it's not a higher standard, y'all. It's a different standard. It's a different standard. It's not the same. He's lost. We had a child that had a shot to graduate from New Hartford. And now, I don't know if he does. I want to say that he doesn't. I don't ever want to say that, but he doesn't have it, okay? Now, it is true what Mr. Jadon said. It is true that the administration and the board have done a lot of stuff. The teachers have done unbelievable things to make this implementation as painless as possible. Anything that's been asked, we've been trying to give. And the parents here who are spending at least 2 hours a night with their kids, the same as I am with mine, are doing unbelievable things to make this thing work. All right? Now, as a board member, I want to ask the rest of this board to listen to what is happening to our children in our schools. Not continue to pound our chest about what we've done to make it better. And we have. But the time for pounding our chest about what we've done is over. The time to start advocating for our kids who are suffering mental problems, social problems, is upon us. And we've got to take this message to Claudia as New Hartford Schools, not as Ed Flema, but as New Hartford Schools, to Joe Griffo. We've got to take this to the Board of Regents as New Hartford Schools, that our kids in school today are being abused by the common. So with that said, guys, this is a little bit of my experience, but again, as always, I want to thank all the teachers for everything they do for our children. I want to thank all the parents for everything they do. Listen, just think about what's happening in other school systems. Our kids come to school and they're fed. They got breakfast in them. They've got parents like you that are concerned and are working with them every night. That might not be the case elsewhere. So I want to thank you all for everything that you do, and please keep the message coming. Okay? Thanks.
Hi, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight either, but having listened to everybody, I feel like there's 3 points I would like to make. I have a son who's in 6th grade at Miles. He's always been a very good student, usually all 4s, maybe an occasional 3+. Last year, he did not pass or he got a 1, I should say, on his state assessment, thank you. He kept asking me all summer, Mom, did you get the results? Did you get the results? And thank God New Hartford didn't give them out, because I didn't have to lie to him and say, no, yes, I have them, and you didn't do well. He didn't do well. I kept that information from him. He still has no idea, because I couldn't let his self-esteem take a hit like that, because all during the year it had been taking hits. I couldn't let it happen again. That was my first point. Second point is, last year, one of his teachers was out for a brief time. They had a substitute who was a former teacher come in. This teacher took the kids out back at Miles, took them out into the woods. There was a pond back there. He was telling the kids how they used to make birdhouses. They were talking about the habitat out there. He came home so excited that they did something, they were learning something, and he said, Mom, why can't we do that regularly? The teachers aren't allowed to anymore, Connor. They have to stick right to what they're doing. So that was difficult conversation to have for him when he came home and was just so excited, and it's like, no, doesn't fit the module, can't do it. My third point is that 2 of my son's teachers and former teacher are in this room, and I think the world of them. I think they go above and beyond looking out for our children, trying to do their best with helping them, tutoring them on the side. And my thoughts are that any part of their evaluation would be tied to this testing is absolutely disheartening to everybody. So thank you to those teachers.
I'm Maggie Doyle. I'm a 2nd grade teacher at Hughes. I taught kindergarten, I taught 1st grade, I've taught a lot of things. And I've been teaching long enough that I now have the children of the people that I taught. So that gives you an idea. But I think some of the things that Tom has said are so true. I've worked a lot on the Common Core, and I think the implementation was kind of crazy. I think there's a saying that says of those of whom much is given, much is expected. And Mr. Jadhan, you asked what you could do. I think for the New Hartford School Board to take a stand, we are a very blessed community, and the people that are here chose to live in New Hartford so their children would have the opportunities they have. And I think there are some things we can do. And I think one of the things that a lot of the primary teachers feel, the rigor has been raised, but the age level for kindergarten has not. We're asking children to do things that is developmentally not appropriate. And it would be very appropriate when the kindergarten team, which is made of speech pathologists and social workers and nurses, gives the DTKR, the developmental test for kindergarten readiness. If they could sit down, and the reason they give that test is to determine which children are very above average, which children are struggling. If they could sit down and talk to the parents of the children that show they're developmentally maybe not ready for kindergarten, and talk to them about what is going to be expected of those children when they get to kindergarten, because I think our expectations, the rigor's been raised, the bar's been put up there, and we're asking children to do things that they are not ready to do. And it shows up in kindergarten, it shows up in 1st grade, but by 2nd grade they hit the wall, particularly in writing. That's a very high level abstract concept. And there is plenty of research that shows children develop at a given rate. There's nothing we can do to speed that up. They're going to develop when they're ready. Parents have the ultimate choice whether they want to send their children to kindergarten or not at that time, but I think they need to know, and they need to know the results of the tests, because they're not told. They don't know. And then when they get to second grade and I sit down and talk to them about a child that's struggling, they'll say to me, well, I thought if they weren't ready for kindergarten, they would have told me. I
That's a
think
great
we owe
point.
that.
So you're saying, maybe tell the parent, wait till next September?
Our yeah, maybe sit down with the parents and look at the DTKR and say, this is what we're seeing. This is what's going on. Research says children develop at a given rate. Go ahead and send your child, but it's going to be tough. You're going to have to spend a lot of time at home and in school, and there's not much we can't say for sure that that's going to help, because they're going to develop when they're ready. The state, we know, determines kindergarten entrance. I have a list of dates here of all the different states. New York is kind of a nebulous thing, but I think if enough school boards go to the state and say, you've raised the rigor, now let's talk about kindergarten entrance. Because if we're raising the rigor, how fair is that?
Well, and also sometimes parents have a choice. They can send them this year or next year,
Right.
depending on. That's great, and that's a perfect example of people in the trenches giving the board insight that we wouldn't
I don't
otherwise
know,
have.
you know,
But I mean,
that's
thank
just
you.
something that it might be something you want to consider.
Can I just add to that real quick? I teach preschool, and there's absolutely no communication with the school district and the preschool to even know what the kindergarten kids need to be ready for, what they need to enter kindergarten. We have asked and asked and asked to meet with the kindergarten teachers, and we never get any results.
I think we've done so many right things. You know, when we adopted the curriculums that we have chosen, you know, I worked with the Common Core, I saw the modules. I think we went the best choice we had. There's so many things that are out of our control. Let's do what we can. That's a great point.
I think, just from my perspective, and I can only speak for myself, not for the entire board, I appreciate what everybody in this room has said so far. Many of you are people that I know, that are my friends, that are, I know to be excellent educators, people who haven't spoken, who are standing in the back of the room, who I deeply respect their opinions of. I think my biggest question has always been, and continues to be, as I listen to Maggie, what you're saying, and Tom, to what you said about some of the consequences for the people at SCD that have spoken up, is what is the latitude of the Board of Education as we guide the district? And then what are the potential consequences to the district? Because the State Department has acted, I mean, between the funding that's been cut from the districts rather arbitrarily since 2009, the way that they decide to aid something, not aid something, we'll give you some extra money for this, but not for this, we'll do universal pre-K, but only downstate, not upstate, but we're not gonna fully fund regular education. I worry about what the consequences are for the district if we, as my grandmother would say that to the state education department.
I think children should be more important than money coming in.
I don't disagree with you. I guess my concern is just,
I'm sorry.
The
what is that looking like?
referendum that you wrote, the board's referendum about Common Core was really well done.
Well, maybe if all the schools would make a point.
I think maybe it didn't go as far as you could, and I think because New Hartford, you know, when Vince, we created the teacher evaluation system, it was one of 2, 3 that were accepted. New Hartford's opinion is valued.
Yeah.
Right,
And I think
right.
if we
Yeah.
speak to the State Department
Yeah.
and say, it's not necessarily that it's going to change. You can't decide to raise the kindergarten entrance. But I think you can say to the state, this is what you've given us. This is how we feel. This is the pressure we're getting from our community.
Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to say something. I'm Claudia Tenney. I'm the assembly member who voted against all these things in the state assembly. I just want to give you a little bit of perspective. I grew up in New Hartford with Ed. He was a great guy, really. I just tease him. But I actually live on the same street that I grew up on, and my son attended New Hartford and had many of the same teachers I did, who are somewhere sitting in this room. Wonderful people like Mr. Witten, Louise. She probably doesn't remember me anymore.
I do.
I memorized so many things from Louise's class. I still recite them at times. But anyway, one of the things that we've been, and I'm against the Common Core. I'm against a lot of the things about it. And when Beth raised the question, what can we do? I actually represent 7 counties and 37 school districts. So I've been conducting Common Core forums all over the state and all over my district, and I just finished another one recently. Everything that you're saying here is exactly what everyone's saying at every other Common Core event, from parents to teachers, the lack of respect for teachers and the profession, and as Mr. Witten called it, the calling that we have as teachers. I had fantastic teachers at New Hartford. I remember all of them. My son loved New Hartford. He did really well. Went on to a top college and did really well there as well. So what we do at New Hartford is very important, and a lot of my school districts, and I know this board as well, and I know your administrators, have been very vocal about trying to try to remedy this to the best that they can. Now, state ed is a large albatross, and we've tried to change the regents. I know a lot of you have been involved with that, and it was, we ended up getting a spiritual weight loss, I don't know what she was, the last minute, thrown in and voted for, unfortunately, by the majority of the people in the assembly, someone really not qualified to be weighing in as a regent on this very, very important issue. So we've been fighting the fight, but I think the point made that New Hartford as a leader is definitely true. New Hartford is one of the top schools in the state as well, and you have wonderful, we are here. I'm in New Hartford because of the school district originally, my family's here, but it was a wonderful opportunity for my son. He rode on the same bus at the same bus stop, and we had all those consistencies and for him. And he was a wonderful. He had a great experience. He didn't have to go through Common Core, and I often wonder what he would have been like had he gone through Common Core. And I do agree that it is abusive and it is unfair what we're doing to our students and to our teachers and our administrators, and putting them in a position where they're strangled by we're not going to get our funding. And that's the common theme that I'm hearing from many of the school districts in my district who say, what are we going to do? We're going to fight the state ed department. We're going to fight Governor Cuomo, and they're going to pull even more money away. We're in the middle of doing the state budget right now. Many of you are very astute about what gap elimination, and Beth mentioned the money that's being taken away. Well, my first reading of the assembly budget was the gap elimination, which is about $1.8 billion right now, is only going to be restored to about $323 million, and then the Senate has put back maybe a half. So we're still leaving our school districts, although they're over $1 billion short in funding, while we continue to pass down expensive programs like Common Core that are national top-down programs, like No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top. These federal programs that are being forced down we should be allowed to have our right to choose on that. And I think I know that I've spoken with, you have a wonderful board and you have great administrators. Getting together with all the administrators across the state and getting together with your groups is going to help you advocate for changes in this. And I think that's the most effective thing you can do, and I know that we've talked about that. You just need to continue to advocate and advocate for changes. Advocate for at least a stalling of this implementation that has been a disaster for our kids. And I worry because all of you sound just like all the people I've heard. And I sat at my Utica Common Core Forum. It was at the BOCES. I think for 4.5 hours I didn't move from my chair. And it was heart-wrenching to listen to the stories, much like yours. Kids stabbing themselves with their pencils, being stressed and unhappy and not learning. That's not the New Hartford I went to. I had wonderful experiences at New Hartford, and all of you probably did too. I had wonderful teachers like Louise. I had Mr. Witten. I didn't have Adam for homework. Believe it or not, he's a youthful guy. So it's just that's your advocacy to get together with the School Boards Association or any groups that you can to go to impact the state ed in some way. Because right now, the budget negotiations are going on, and I don't see the Senate putting a sufficient amount of money back into this. They're putting a little more in, but to cover some of these unfunded mandates that you've been faced with. As we always say, we're not going to put any more mandates on, and every year we just continue with APPR, and then the disclosure problems with APPR, throwing APPR into a faulty implementation of Common Core has been a problem, and so we need to continue to fight that fight. And there's several of my colleagues, I know that you probably know who they are, they've actually gotten attention statewide because we really are trying to solve this problem. And I really think that you just get together with as many groups as you can and keep fighting this fight, because there's a lot of you here. Believe it or not, there's people all over that just don't have the time to get out. They're home doing Common Core questions. So, but I just want to know, I'm here because it really matters a lot to me. New Hartford is so important to me, and it's part of my life and my past. And I just want to see us continue to be number one. So thank you.
Do you have anyone else that would like to address? Mr. Ward?
Everybody, thank you.
Thanks.
I had the privilege, I'm Drew Ward. I've got 2 students in the district. I've got one more starting right here next year. My wife Jennifer and I here tonight. And I apologize because we have to go home because they're actually babysitting themselves, although they're 13 and 12, so they can do it for a little while. The thing that I took out of tonight, and you know, I agree with Mr. Jadon's comment especially. It's so nice to see this many people. I think we actually have more people here than I saw from athletic events, which is nice to see. But I think it's important to remember that it's easy as a community when we're upset about something like this, and as a parent, both of us are very upset about this, to find someone to be angry with, and it's easy to find someone as close as our board to yell at or to be angry with when I think it may be misdirected. You know, the board is in a position where they have to worry about funding and where it's coming from, and as I was saying to you inside, you know, it'd be nice that we could just say to the state, well, we don't want it, but what do we do? Do we fire teachers? Do we cut programs? What do we do without the money that we would give up? So we have to, in some ways, play the game, and I hate to put it that way, but we have to find another solution to it. And these are the people, everyone sitting at this table are the people that can advocate for us. There isn't anyone up here who isn't willing, and I sat with most of them for 5 years or close to 5 years, that isn't willing to listen and isn't going to take from this a huge amount of respect for you and for the position that you've all taken, brought to them tonight. And I think we'll take with that an advocacy to the state and to the representatives, who I think are really their mouthpiece to the state. So take your advocacy and point it in the right direction, and I think that is to take the board members, our administration, who we've elected, who we've selected to care for our kids, and use them in the capacity that they've asked to be used, and that is to advocate for our kids, as opposed to vilifying them, which I don't think anybody here is necessarily doing, but to encourage them and to support them with good information. And I think there's been a lot of really good information here tonight as well, so that they can go to the state and advocate for us. So, thank you.
New Hartford is a great place, and we want our students to continue to flourish in every way. Our intent is to help make things better for students and families. It is our moral and professional duty to do so. I'm here speaking for the 4th grade team at the Arkansas Elementary. We are very appreciative that the district is beginning to make changes to the number and length of assessments. These new changes, though, they just scratch the surface. If given the opportunity to share what we feel would be most beneficial in providing some immediate relief, we would have many suggestions. I can only speak for our 4th grade team, but as far as I have been made aware, our input has not been sought. We as teachers in the district have a vested interest in the well-being and success of our students, and would like to be involved in the changes that are being made as much as possible. I have a couple very specific changes that we as 4th grade team think would make an immediate difference, and we have many, many more, and I will be happy to share them. Just feel that you know, we don't feel like we're really being heard. And we want our kids to succeed, we do. And we are willing to jump through every hoop that's put in front of us. That's what we've been doing. But at some point, we need to stop and say, why are we doing this? Thank you.
I had a prepared statement, and I don't know that there's anything that I can say more than the people in this room here said tonight. I do want to thank you all for your time. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank you for your service. This is a long, tireless job. You spent countless hours serving our community. Everybody here in this room acknowledges that and appreciates that. So thank you for being here tonight, and thank you folks for being here tonight. You know, I could make George and Louise jokes, but I'm not going to. But in truth, they were two people who were very influential in having me come back to the calling of education. I hope that you heard the sincerity and the emotion in the voices of the people that were here. And I hope you didn't misconstrue people stating that their kids hate school for you know, a want for more snow days, or, you know, kids just want to have fun. These concerns are as real as the people that you see in this room here before you. These are our children. And we can't look at a future of, you know, for my wife and I, for a kid who's going to come into kindergarten next year, 13 years. I can't look at a future of 13 years of that. What we saw from state ed in the last 2 years was a disaster. Nobody can deny that. Never before have we had so little influence about what it is that we're doing in our school district. Never. So, you know, for us to lament about it, or, you know, I'm certainly, we're not calling the board out. I think we're saying what we're doing isn't working. And I think it really is time to stop and say, you know, we have to look and say, if what we're doing right, and it's not working, is the thing that we're doing wrong. The people that hear, these people are a gift. I see opportunity. I look out at this audience and I see hope. You know, this is a pool from which you can draw strength, from which you can draw unity, and you can advocate for yourselves, and you can advocate for our children, for our school, for our profession. But we have to do that together. There is no finality to this work. You know, I was pleased to be asked to be the facilitator for the Parent-Teacher Task Force. We had a couple of really great productive meetings, and you know, I think the people who served on that task force will tell you they were really disappointed that the board chose no longer to participate, because we can only solve these problems if we do it together. And so, you know, I have an invitation here, and you know, I want to pass those around to the board members. We really can truly only be successful if you, the Board of Education, join us. And so I put it to you. The choice is yours. And I thank you for your time and your consideration for what people here tonight had to say.
Wrap it up? Good, thank you.
One more. I'm not here about Common Core because right yet I only have a barely 1-year-old. But I'm scared to So I'm here though because my name is Jason Tallman. I worked in New Hartford for 10 years. I left 2 years ago to start my own business. I worked in the technology department with Jim and Ivan and Mike Amante. So I sent this letter to Debbie Dowling today. I knew that she was the union president, right? Okay. And I just want to read this, what I sent to her. New Hartford Schools has, in my opinion, always done things a little different than other districts. Our technology department was a shining example of that. At one time, we had a full-time technology director, Jim Dieso, network administrator, Ivan Rankins, and myself, a technology specialist, plus a part-time technology integration specialist, Mike Amante. Our team was able to deliver a quality of service that was unmatched by any other district. We knew that in order for teachers to truly adopt technology, they would need to be able to rely on it. We had to create a culture where our fellow coworkers expected and demanded that it work. Largely, I feel that we delivered on that goal. We were able to deliver on this because we had a staff of people employed by the district that had a vested interest in the success of the school. Other districts used to look at New Hartford for guidance on where to take their technology program. We spoke at state conferences to packed convention rooms about what amazing things we were doing in the district. I don't believe this is still the case. The district is no longer the forward-thinking place that used to be. It has now become the status quo. Today, I own a software company, and we sell software to legal companies all over the country. I employ one full-time person and many, many contracted workers. Contractors are great at filling gaps in the workforce and can help you meet goals, but they aren't invested in the success of my business because they aren't employed by my business. This is the point of this message. I know the reality Ivan's not here.
Do you want me to finish?
It's about, yeah, please.
Let's see. Oh, I don't hit this part of it.
Okay, I'm good now. All right. I know the reality of Ivan's passing is still setting in with many of you. He's only been gone a couple weeks. To be brutally honest, it will be almost impossible to replace him. But what the district needs is someone who has a vested interest in the success of the technology department. They need to employ someone directly, not contract the position out to Bosse's or Morick. That's what I'm here to say.
Okay, thank you all for attending. We're going to move on the agenda, and we're going to have Zach talk about enhancement of Common Core in 2012.
Don't let anybody shut you.
No, we will.
That's, there's too many things.
What he was saying.
Real quick.
It's not a question of fun. It's a question of he's a former president. He's the don't let anybody problem. No, we don't. This is getting more. She was a blind teacher. For the last several months, largely part of we have more, we have more people like him. We do shit, we change right a few schools running for we need people that are more concerned about politics. No, you don't let anybody else, and I wish you.
I'm not going to hug you because I got a huge ulcer on my lip. So adios. Oh no.
That's how we got our Yorkie.
Yeah, so there's 7 How are you?
I just wanted to bring to the board's attention the field in the back of the high school. Paul Pizacci. I teach the high school and I coach lacrosse. We've had the field for 4 years and it's never plowed. time, given the spring sports. This year it's been, obscenely bad, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better. If you drove by the field today, we had 30 or 40 high school kids out there with shovels doing the work of the machine that we have that should be doing that work. So I just wanted to bring to your attention that it's not getting done, and the response is, well, the weather is uncooperative. Yeah, it'll melt. I believe it's Andy Moore. The turf field. The turf. We went through the chain of command again. Parents are getting phone calls, and they called Bob's office. Parents that I spoke to said that they called your office and were told to speak to Andy Moore. They spoke with Andy. Okay. I'm just bringing it to your attention that we have a $2.5 million field, we have the equipment to clean it off, and it's never ready. This is something that probably should have been started in February, so that on March 1st it was ready to go, not starting the first week in March, and now it's not ready until April. So I just wanted to bring that to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Well, I'll try to speak a little loud, and some of my presentation is text-based, so people will be asked to read those slides. I don't want to come forward. I did give each board member a copy of the slides and a couple of handouts. What I was asked to do was to prepare a presentation for the board that compares the 2005 standards with the Common Core. And specifically, I was asked to do kind of a side-by-side comparison, so that's what I was going to try to do. So first, a little bit about the scope of the presentation. I am using selected standards. I'm not going to give you all the standards that are out there, so I did choose. I will do a side-by-side comparison, and I'll try to give you a sense of some of the things that are similar in the standards and some of the things that are different in the standards. I'll also take the liberty of going outside that initial request of doing a side-by-side comparison, and I'll also give some perspectives of the standards from state ed, from some of the noted critics, and also my own observations. Just to start with a little bit of vocabulary versus jargon, I think it would be important to start there. There is a difference between standards and curriculum. Standards are statements about what students should know and be able to do. For example, one of the standards is that students understand equivalent fractions. They know that 2/4 and 3/6 is the same as 1/2. And eventually they'll know that's the same as 0.5. That's a standard. A curriculum is what is put in front of the students to get at that standard. What problems are they doing? What worksheets are they doing? What books are they reading that are trying to get at those standards? Just a little bit of difference. You've heard a lot of talks about modules. Modules is a curriculum option for schools that are aligned to Common Core, and they are published by the state of New York. They work with a couple of vendors to put those out, and as Mr. Janhan said, the New Hartford.
Excuse me, Vince. Guys in the back, people in the back, if you're going to talk, could you take it outside, please? Thank you.
New Hartford is using some modules, but mostly not. Most of our module work is in junior high and in grade 6. But just we have a variety of curriculum that we use. Some that we have purchased, some that we've developed our own. And then there are the State Education Department has put out what they call the shifts, pedagogical shifts in education. I gave a handout for you in part of my packet. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I've done presentations on the shifts before, so they're there for your reference. I'm going to kind of go beyond those a little bit. All right, so I'm going to start a little bit with the structure of how the 2005 compares with the Common Core. And this slide shows the math standards, what are called strands. And on the left, you see the 2005, and they go from number sense and operations to algebra, geometry, measurement, and statistics and probability. So these are kind of the big topics that are dealt with in each grade in 2005. And you can look over in the Common Core, and you can see that there is quite a bit of similarity. I think Mr. Sneezek, when he was speaking, saying that there is a lot of similarities between the Common Core and the 2005, and you can see here. There are differences as well, and I'll try to point those out. Also in the math standards, they refer to what are called their practices. And you can see there in the 2005, it had to do with problem solving and reasoning and connections and representation. And the Common Core has similar practices. You can see some are very similar, like problem solving and reasoning abstractly. Some are a little more detailed. Where in the 2005 it talked about representation, representing math practices. The Common Core talks about modeling with mathematics and using appropriate tools and constructing viable arguments. So they're similar, but also different. They have different emphasis, and one of the emphasis of the Common Core in math in particular are some of those middle ones where students are asked to model with mathematics, to show you physically and visually how the mathematics works, and to use the appropriate tools. You've heard of teachers using 10 frames and arrays and math cubes, and so those are some of the details that go along with that. ELA structure is a little more difficult with more differences. In 2005, the ELA standards, there were 4 standards only, and each of those standards had 4 purposes for language, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So I didn't list the standards, but they were reading, writing, speaking, and listening for information, for literature, for critical analysis, and for social interaction. The 2005 standards were also divided into grade level bands, K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12. It was up to each district to decide where those particular standards fit in particular grades. So there was a little more latitude. If you go over to the Common Core side, there are 10 anchor standards in the ELA in each of those bulleted areas that are very similar. So there are 10 anchor standards for literature, 10 anchor standards for information, reading for informational text, that are parallel in structure, same with writing and speaking and language. Standard 10 is one that's a little bit different than the 2005. It talks about, that's the standard of level of complexity. They talk about the staircase of complexity, where each grade level, the standard increases and gets more difficult. The Common Core are grade by grade standards. So instead of having a K2 band, there are specific elements for grade K, grade 1, grade 2, going all the way up to grade 12. And the Common Core also includes standards for other content areas like social studies, science, and technical subjects. They have literacy standards that are attached to those as well. So that's a little bit of the structure. What are some of the key differences in math? These are just little bullet topics. One is the Common Core says they teach fewer topics, and you notice I put it in quotations. That there's more generalizing and more linking of concepts. I put that in quotations. That's really my little editorial piece. I don't believe there was a lot of hope that the Common Core would have sufficient amount of fewer topics where teachers and students can explore those topics in greater depth. But as you've heard here, and certainly it is true that there still seems to be not enough time to teach those topics. And I don't know if they reduce the amount of topics sufficiently, but that is one of those key differences. There are fewer, but the students are expected to demonstrate a much deeper understanding of those fewer, which provides challenges for everyone. In math, there's an emphasis on both conceptual understanding.
Vince, sorry, but just back up a little. I've heard from teachers here that have presented to us that there's not any fewer topics, but there are. I mean,
yeah, there are. Not a lot. I can get that for you, but there's more time required.
Right. They said that what's been presented to us, to the board, is that not only is there more time required, the topics are the same.
I don't know if they're the same. They're similar, but they have reduced some topics in each grade level.
Okay.
There's an emphasis on conceptual understanding and procedural fluency. What is called is not just getting the right answer. So there is a great deal of emphasis on math, on Common Core math, and having the students demonstrate that they understand how the answer was arrived at. And in one sense, it's nothing new. We've always asked students to show their work and to explain their answers. This takes it to a new level where they have to show that conceptual understanding. There are some concepts that are taught in earlier grades, and that's having an impact. And there are a few topics that are actually taught in later grades, but most of the grade shifts occur going down rather than up. There is a focus on mastery of complex concepts via hands-on learning. Again, students are using manipulatives, especially in the lower grades. They're using counters and cubes, trying to visualize and draw what the math looks like. There is a similar an emphasis on mathematical modeling, and the standards do increase in complexity grade by grade. In ELA, here are some of the key differences. One is that the literacy is considered building a shared responsibility for all content area teachers. This is actually nothing new for New Hartford. This is new to the Common Core, but New Hartford has a long history of sharing responsibility for literacy. We've had a cross-discipline standard called Effective Communicator, which is part of our writing program for many, many years. So this was actually a pretty easy shift for us to have shared responsibility for literacy. There is an increased emphasis on teaching the reading of informational text or nonfiction text. Again, that was not a huge shift for New Hartford. We had long understood the importance of informational text and included a good balance of fiction and nonfiction in our program prior to the Common Core, and continue that into the Common Core. This is one of the things that is different. You've heard some of the speakers today talk about an emphasis on close reading and an emphasis on staying within the text. And that's presented some challenges, and I would say that this is one of the real key differences in ELA, particularly with that staying within the text. The questions that teachers ask, the kinds of evidence that students are asked to demonstrate an understanding, they're being made to stay within that text. Show me in the text where it says this. Show me where your evidence is. It's a little different than, if I think back on before the Common Core, we did a lot of work with teachers and students on making connections. So if you read this story, what does it remind you of? It might be a personal anecdote or personal reflection. There's a lot less of that. There's a lot more of answering the questions about the text and staying inside that text. There's an integration in the Common Core of research skills across the standards. And there's an increased emphasis on speaking and writing to argue and to inform and to explain. And there's a reduced emphasis on narrative writing and writing for social interaction. And that will increases as you go up in grade level. What the Common Core says is when you're in the primary grades, it should be kind of an equal amount of narrative writing to writing to inform and writing to explain. And as you get up into grades, it should be less narrative and more of the other kinds of writing. So here I'll give side-by-side comparisons. Again, I apologize for those that are sitting in the back. If you can't see, you're certainly welcome to come up front. So this is comparing a grade 1 math standard, and on the left is the 2005 standard, and on the right is the kind of parallel or similar standard that is in Common Core. And this is about place value, so where 10s, 1s, things. And one of the things is you'll notice, one of the things you'll notice is that, there is a lot of similarity. If you look at the third bullet on 2005, it's about knowing place value up to 100. And the same is true on the right side. The Common Core still expects students to know place value up to 100. But there are some differences, and the first thing that comes to mind, or first thing that should be somewhat obvious, is that the Common Core standards are more detailed and a little more explicit in their description. On the left you see explore and use place value, and on the right it's a little more of assertive. Understand that 2 digits of a 2-digit number represent amounts of 10s and 1s. It's just spelled out in more detail. Another point to point out here, use my laser pointer. In the old standards, first graders were expected to use words like higher, lower, greater, and less than compared to numbers. And that's still true in Common Core, but they're introducing these symbols. And it's not just the words greater, but they're actually looking at some of those math symbols. So again, I think you can see that there are some similarities to the standards, but there also is some differences as well. Moving on, I know this is really hard to read. I'm very, very sorry, but I'll do the best I can to try to show this. This is also math, This is grade 3, and it's about fractions. Again, the 2005 standards are on the left, and the Common Core is on the right. Again, I'll point out that there are similarities. This is about, the old standard was to develop an understanding of fractions as a part of a whole and parts of a collection. And this is the Common Core basically saying the same thing. It's about fractions being part of a whole, but it does so in much more explicit, detailed language. It talks about understand a fraction as 1 over b, as the quantity formed by one part when a whole is partitioned into b equal parts. Understand a fraction as a over b, as the quantity formed by a parts of the size of b. And then it goes on to some bullets that break it down into even more detail. So you see this throughout the standards, that in the old standards, we were doing fractions, and in the new standards, we're still doing fractions. And basically, the same thing. You understand that fractions are a part of a whole. The Common Core is, again, a more detailed description of those standards. One of the things I know that the Common Core attempted to do was to try to take some of the ambiguity out of that. If you look at the old standards, develop an understanding of fractions. If you shared that with different groups of teachers, they may have different understanding about what that means. But the Common Core is attempting to try to be at least more explicit about what that means. And again, I'll point this out similarly. The old standard talked about explore equivalent fractions like 1/2, 1/3, and 1/4. The Common Core has a similar standard, and rather than using the term explore, it uses the term explain the equivalence of fractions in special cases and compare fractions by reasoning about their actual size. And then it goes down and gives some bullet items that are explicit, and again talking about that 1/2 is the same as 2/4, and 4/6 is the same as 1/3, and similar there. So it's not new math. The standards themselves are similar, but a little more detailed. I think that would be a takeaway. This is an ELA standard, Reading for Information and Understanding, in the old standards, and in the Common Core it's called Reading Standards for Informational Text. This is grade 3. Again, you can see there's a lot of similarities. Identifying the main idea and supporting details, and in the new standards it's determine the main idea of the text, recount the details, and explain how they support the main idea. It's similar, but again, the Common Core just takes it a little further. Down here, it's about recognizing text features like table of contents and indices and page numbers, and Common Core talks about using text features as well and search tools to locate information. So again, I would say that they're similar. Same here, using captions and charts and graphs in the 2005 standards. It does talk about with assistance in the old standards here. That's an important phrase. In the new standards, it's somewhat similar in talking about getting information, but you notice it doesn't say with assistance or with assistance.
One thing that jumps out at me, it's not in the old standard, but it's in the new one. Describe the relationship between a series of historical events, scientific ideas or concepts, or steps and technical procedures in a text using language that perhaps to time, sequence, and cause and effect for a third grader.
For a third grader. That's first, second, and third. What came first, what came next, what came after. The big difference that I see is here. This is pervasive throughout the Common Core. Ask and answer questions to demonstrate an understanding of the text, referring explicitly to the text as the basis for the answer. So you could see there that idea of staying within the text and to have that understanding of the text. That is what is new. That if anything, if there was any one thing that stands out in the Common Core, I think that's what would be that.
Well, Vince, we always hear that there's these gaps, especially in math.
I'll get to the gaps. The gaps are, well, if I showed you like a 5th grade standard, it would have a 5th grade standard written as if the student was in Common Core from kindergarten. And that student has not been in Common Core from kindergarten, so they didn't have all that background developed for 5 years. they've had it for 2 years to try to get used to it. So it was really.
Is there anything that kind of shows that? I mean,
Well, that one right there. I mean, I think
Okay.
that one in green would be one that students had not was not emphasized before, and now they're being asked to stay within the text. I think there was a comment in there that some of the questions were about, you know, show me which line in the text refers to this, or show me which paragraph in the text refers to this. There's a lot more of that going on now with the Common Core than there was before. Not that we didn't do that before, we did do that, but clearly it's a major emphasis in the Common Core.
So Mr. Kendall, so they're basically trying to take these kids that are in 3rd through 6th grade, really from 0 to 70, fast forward, because they didn't have that advantage of starting from kindergarten, or even the proposed pre-K programs that the government's proposing.
Right. The Common Core standards were rolled out all at once for all grade levels. They weren't.
And that's
They
the
were
thing-
not phased in.
Right, and I think that's where you're seeing the stress and the anxiety on the part of these children in that select group. Because I will say my 3rd grader is probably doing, I mean, they're all doing okay and well, but my 3rd grader is probably doing the best, because she's getting it at a younger age.
And from day one. Right, absolutely. This is staying within ELA, this is 5th grade. On the left is reading standards for literacy and response and expression, and the right is standards for literature. And what I want to point out here are the verbs that are used in the old standards: read, define, select, read aloud, recognize, identify. Right, those are the verbs. The verbs in the Common Core are a little stronger. Quote accurately, determine the theme, compare and contrast, explain, describe, analyze. So here you can see some of the increased rigor that people are talking about. Students are asked to do more with standards, and I think you can see that by the verbs that are used. There's a difference between identifying something and explaining something. There's a difference between recognizing something and analyzing something. And I think most would agree that the verbs used on the right side are more complex thinking skills that it's in the standard. So moving up a little bit here, it's grade 7 and 8. This is again ELA. This is about making connections about different texts. And I show this to you again. I think it highlights that the Common Core is more detailed text. So they're really saying similar things about explaining connections between and among text, but the Common Core talks about specific with drama and poetry and other text and ideas. And this is a junior high math. Again, you'll see some of the similar themes that I've been attempting to show. This is a 7th grade standard about statistics. The 2005 standard was to show select the appropriate measure of central tendency, and the related Common Core standard describes that in a great deal, more detail about understanding that the probability of a chance event is a number between 1 and 0, and that the larger the number, the more likely that event is going to happen, and the smaller the number, the more likely event, or it's more unlikely that that event will happen. And if it's 50-50 or half, it's either likely or unlikely. That's just a more detail. And again, look at the verb. One is select the appropriate measure of central tendency, and the Common Core is understanding. So it's a different level of expectation that you're seeing. And in grade 9 through 12, in ELA, the old standard, one of them was about making judgments about the quality of text by applying personal and academic criteria, such as found in literary criticism, political and historic analyses. And on the right, the Common Core, again using stronger verbiage, cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as drawing inferences from the text, including determining where the text leaves matters uncertain. So there are some similarities, but again, I believe the Common Core is asking students to do it's a more rigorous standard in that sense. So that's a lot of the side-by-side comparison. I'll step outside what my original charge was, because I think to understand the angst that people are feeling about the Common Core, you really have to have a discussion about the level of rigor in the assessments. So these next two slides come from Engage New York, And state uses it as an example to show the level of rigor. And I'm actually going to ask you to do math, and I actually have a couple of these if people want to try this. So, yeah, I'm going to give you a minute or so to actually do this problem. This is a 5th grade problem from pre-Common Core days about fractions. So go ahead and take a minute to do that. If you answer J, good for you. And you would know that you're taking the 1/3 cup from the crumb and 1/3 cup from the filling and add those together as 2/3 cup. This is an example of a 5th grade Common Core style question. So take a minute. It's on the back of yours. It's on this one. This whole handout. It's always. Again, I'll invite everybody out there to answer this question as well. Tito and Luis can stuff the pizza. Yeah, let me give you a hint. You better draw it. And I'm going to shorten it only because I don't want to torture you guys, but I know that it's been a long meeting so far. So I think you would agree that this is a more complex problem. First of all, what is it asking the students to do? It's asking them who's correct, Luis or Tito, and to show their mathematical thinking. I don't know why there it is. So this is the answer. This is a kid who got it right. The first thing he put down is, I'm going to find out who's correct, Tito or Luis. I'm going to make a diagram. So he makes a key. He draws the 3 pizzas, the pepperoni, the mushroom, and the cheese. What part of the pizza did Luis eat? What part of the pizza did Tito eat? So Tito ate these, he adds them up, it's 1 1/8. Luis ate these, he added them up, it's 1 1/8. So they were the same, so he said that Luis was correct. So you can see that it's multi-step. You really can't do it in your head. And that, to me, is a good example of the level of rigor that's being expected of our students.
How long did he have to do it?
You know, this was given as a sample from Engage New York, so I don't know the answer to that. To me, this looks like a part 2 or part 3 question where the students might have 90 minutes to do 5 or 6 of those.
The amount of time is a big answer.
Amount of time is big, absolutely. Being able to, it is important.
Some of their homework problems are very similar to this. I have 2 5th graders right now, and it'll take at least a half a page to get to some of the homework pages.
Yeah.
So you're doing 2 hours a math a night at 5th grade.
I
It's
had-
not appropriate.
I had 6 3-step math problems with my son tonight. And by the time we get done the 6th one, it was an hour, took us an hour, he still didn't have a clue.
All right. They're working through it, but they don't comprehend it.
My daughter.
And I know I finally got it after the 5th one.
My daughter's in 3rd grade, and I see a lot of very similar kinds of questions, not as complex, but similar multi-step problems where she's just learned the first step, and now she's being asked to chain 3 or 4 things together.
And this is
at
a
the
good.
end, yeah, it's a perfect example.
Well, here's another one. This is one that actually was from the released questions from last year's test. So this was an actual question given to 4th graders last year. And again, you can see it is multi-step. You read it, first thing you have to figure out is how much did each person give at the elementary school. And you do that by dividing 1890 by 6. I think you come out with 315. And then you would see it's giving you that each person at the middle school gave 280. So how much more did the elementary school give than the person in the middle school? So they would subtract the 280 from 315, and I think the answer is 35. So, but that's an example of a fairly typical complex problem. That it is multi-step. It's not, and as someone pointed out, it's also you can't do it unless you can read and make sense of that question as well. So it does test not only your ability to divide, but your ability to recognize what it is you have to do by being able to actually comprehend the question. The next one is really difficult, but again, I gave some samples. For the board, I gave the whole thing. It's a reading on 5th grade about wind tunnels. This is part of the ELA. And what's up here is just paragraphs 5 through 8 of that whole thing. I just couldn't figure a way to put it all on one slide. But I want you to just follow along with me a little bit. So it's a nonfiction piece about wind tunnels. And then the second half of that starts talking about why NASA uses wind tunnels. And it talks about it here in particular, paragraph 6, that they were needed to see how well the Ares rockets would fly, and it would go on to talk about that. And then the question that the students were asked was this. And this is actually typical of what I would call a pretty high level of rigor that you're seeing in these questions. Which sentence from the passage best explains why NASA used wind tunnels to test spacecraft models? And you can see that the word best is in bold. And I will tell you this, there are no throwaway answers here. All of the statements are truthful, and you can find them in the text. The vehicles are made to operate in space. Spacecrafts and rockets have to travel through the atmosphere to get to space, and they're somewhere only a few inches. So there's no kind of obvious wrong answer. The correct answer is C, and it's not, and it's inferential. You know, you're not going to find the direct answer. Kids have to kind of find it and understand it. So we're seeing a lot of these where the nuances between the correct answer and incorrect answers are pretty slim, and that you can make pretty good rationalization for incorrect answers. And so we're seeing some of that as well.
Mr. Condro, one
Yes.
question. You made the comment previous to this about how in-depth it was in the reading, whatever. And again, taking into consideration our school district here, which really, if you look across the state and the country, we truly are an average school district. We're not one of our high wealth districts, et cetera, but it surrounds us. So looking at Utica, with kids with so many, with English as their second language, okay, how could they even possibly attempt to even comprehend any of this?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. It's a little bit of a rhetorical question. I think what you're saying is that if it's a challenge, it's obvious that these are challenging passages and challenging problems, and for any student that struggles, it is going to kind of increase that challenge as well. So I don't know how best to answer that.
They don't have a chance. I mean,
and you're seeing that. You're seeing a lot of students that are struggling. Right?
But we're seeing it here in our own district, I guess is my point, we have the more engaged parent involvement that's going to help get these kids through somewhat, or they're struggling through. So if our kids are struggling through, what are other parts of the state and the country struggling through?
Great. I wanted to share criticism. You actually heard a lot of it. This will perhaps reiterate some of that. What is the criticism regarding Common Core standards and even curriculum? Again, there's a difference between the standard, which is a statement about what kids should know, and the curriculum. Mr. Sneezek pointed out some of the curriculum that is given to kids. That's what's actually what's given to the students to complete. But here's where I see some of the nature of the criticism. One, you've heard it time and again, that it has to do with the implementation. There was not enough time for teachers to learn it, to understand it, and to master the standards. It was kind of given to us very quickly without a lot of background. It's not field tested, so there's no place that you can point to and say that the Common Core, was tried out in Rhode Island for a while, and so we can go to those teachers and ask. It was adopted, basically by those 46 states, all in a similar time frame, and then once adopted by the state, it was implemented on the schools very quickly. And so a couple of ramifications when you don't have that kind of field testing. Number one, we don't really have any experts to turn to say, here's what a really good Common Core curriculum looks like and a classroom looks like, and this is how you can do it. So I know that a lot of our teachers, and me as well, we all felt like we were first-year teachers or almost student teachers. You know, this is all brand new, and you know, there was really no one that we can turn to say, here's how it gets done. So it became very challenging to do that. And the other bullet there about published curriculum materials, I think Mr. Sneezek made that point better than I did, is that publishers were kind of rushing to this. When I talk to some of our publishers, they talk about a 2 to 3 year period to develop a new textbook series, and they really didn't have that to be able to do so. You see a lot of curriculum materials that were published very quickly, and frankly, they have errors on them. Mr. Sneezek pointed out, and he's true, there are errors in curriculum. It's one of the big concerns with the modules that are coming out. And you know, the state is giving the directive, or the state has been given the directive to get that curriculum out. So they're actually rushing it even more to come out there. So by not having it field tested, by having it kind of given to us all at once, I think you'll see some of, this is what I see some of the criticism that's out there, that the curriculum materials you know, are not perfect for sure.
But Vince, aren't we also using Envisions and Journeys
Yeah.
instead of the curriculum?
We're not the modules, but those the Envision program and the Journeys program were selected by a committee as being the best available that were out there. But they too were new. We actually had to wait a year for a math publisher to actually give us any option of a Common Core aligned material.
This is an Envision example.
Yeah, and you know, I would say for the most part, it is very good. It's not perfect. Are there errors in it? Yes, there are errors in it. But there's a lot more correctness to it than there are errors. I think the errors are relatively rare in those, but they are there, and you are seeing them. And because it wasn't kind of field tested, you know, what's being expected of kids to have been done had not occurred in classrooms before in the United States. So it's kind of hit us in the face a little bit. And so now we're, as you heard before, the students that have the benefit of having that from kindergarten on, I think they're adjusting to those.
But did we have other choices besides?
Yeah, we had other choices.
And so this was the best of a bunch of bad choices?
Well, I wouldn't even call it the best of a bunch of bad choices. I think it was the best choice we had. I think I'm generally very pleased with the Envision program and the Journeys program about, do they align to the standards?
Because we were using them before Common Core rolled out?
No, we selected them for the Common Core. Right. And they were, it was a huge committee that spent 12 to 18 months each on math and ELA, and overwhelmingly, unanimously, those were the ones that were selected.
And these were teachers on the committee?
Yeah,
there was
teachers on the committee at every grade level, and you know, overwhelmingly selected. Yeah, but it's not like we had a smorgasbord of things to choose from. And publishing companies are merging. So 10 years ago, there might have been 10 or so options, and now there are basically 2 or 3 because of the mergers that are occurring.
If I could interject, I apologize. I don't know if it's my place to interject, but sorry, I'm going to. As far as, you know, again, going back to my state ed experience in Pearson, there's only 2 companies that work for the state education department, Measurement Incorporated and Pearson Incorporated. And Pearson won the last bid from the state education department, and Pearson is the one that's putting out all the publications, primarily with Common Core. There's other companies, but the one that state ed is endorsing because they have an vested interest is Pearson Incorporated. So
for assessments.
For assessments, and for textbooks.
Well, but the modules are not made by Pearson.
Correct.
It's exponentiary learning and core knowledge. So there are.
For like Journeys.
Journeys is Hoop Mifflin.
I'm sorry, Envision. My bad.
Vince, are we seeing, again, I know we've gone through this and we've talked about this topic, you know, are we seeing strides made at the primary level? Because I think to your point that the gap is have to be the most difficult. And those kids don't have the building blocks that is required to be tested at that time. Are we seeing an understanding and people critical thinking with the primary level?
I would say yes. I would also say that it's still a struggle. But yes, we are seeing I think the students in the primary grades are, again, adapting to it a lot easier. And so our hope is that more experience with that will continue to produce those results.
And in the meantime, we got kids pulling their hair out.
Exactly.
We got kids pulling their hair out. We got kids with migraines. We got kids that feel like they're a failure in the meantime.
So how long, where do we wait until these kids have nervous breakdowns? I was the one at the board meeting, and I specifically asked in February, were we gonna do double math in March? And you told me some schools. Every single one of the schools ended up doing it. My son is the one that started pulling out his hair in March, and that's double math. And I'm here, and I'm gonna stand up for my kids.
Me too.
And every other one, because it's not just my kid alone. You heard a room full of experienced teachers. You have people in this faculty with PhDs. I mean, what does it take, for the state, because they're politicians, for them to wake up and listen? We're gonna lose a generation of kids. I'm not gonna lose my kids. And I've made that commitment to them. And you will be getting tomorrow from me my petition, because I'm gonna run for school board. That's the only reason my kids can understand that I'm at every PTA meeting and I've been coming to board meetings, because I'm fighting for them. They're home doing their homework with their husband, my husband, and struggling through and not having me home to help them with that, because it's the only way that I feel at this point I'm driven to make a difference.
Vince, the biggest complaint you hear is the testing, the over-testing.
It's the time the kids are changing their desks too. It's the intensity that they're getting.
Right. What's that difference between the 2005 standards and Common Core? Why is this big difference in all this testing?
Because we're teaching to a test. We're teaching to what the state wants.
At the state level, they didn't add tests. They did add time to the test. They made them a little longer. The local level, the programs that we had come with those assessments. So the tests are longer than they had been in the past. They're more difficult than they had been in the past, and they're more frequent. And so we've been working to try to look for ways to reduce that. Because we have heard that.
I'll tell you, I hear a lot of parents talking, and most people think that Common Core will not survive.
Well, there's so many legislators that are all submitting their own bills to pull back. The governor has a commercial out there, we're not gonna hold it against your kids, but he wants it to go through only so we can evaluate these teachers who are killing themselves to help these kids, and they're tormenting, going home crying because they're upset at what these kids are being put through. Jim, I respect all the years you've been there. I'm living it. I'm living it with 3 kids.
I agree with her. I don't know how many nights in the last 2 weeks I have spent in tears after grading another set of tests where half of my students failed. And then to know I've got to hand it back to them. And there's no time to actually go over it or learn anything from it, because our pace is just astounding. Because when you say that there's less, but it's deeper, it actually takes more time to do. We're testing more, which means we're teaching less. And it's just, the balance is not there. And we're just in a really, really bad place right now. I mean, I really do. My husband just keeps telling me, get out of education.
We're losing good teachers because of it.
Jim, I'll offer this, and I won't speak at length. If you wanted to look at differences, look at them through the lens of which is more accessible. Those terms on the left and the terms on the right are different. The terms on the right for the Common Core state standards are more accessible. Look at the people who wrote these standards. I will talk at length to anybody about the history of Common Core and see who wrote them. ACT, College Board, Achieve, all people who came from data and assessment fields. There were no teachers involved in this creation. I don't know if that criticism is going to pop up here, but it's certainly one that resonates with educators. So if you see that there's a problem with assessment, it was by design.
In my understanding of Pearson, I've been told by an educator that anybody graduating from college to become a teacher has to submit, I guess, some type of video to Pearson, and they're going to be the single, accrediting body whether that person is qualified to teach across the country. So we have one organization developing standards for the whole country. So if your kid graduated from college to be a teacher and their video wasn't good enough, what do they have to do? Go back and do student teaching again? And somehow wait it out to pay back college loans that are insurmountable?
sounds political.
Absolutely.
It's all political.
No, it's follow the money trail.
Another criticism, I don't have the criticism that Jamie had about assessments, but you talked about the learning gap for students in the intermediate grades because they have not had that Common Core from the beginning. And the focus on ELA of narrowing the curriculum is another criticism that you've heard here. I will say that we've not eliminated science or social studies, we've not eliminated art or music or PE, we have not taken that time. We have added time to math instruction, and I don't believe we added time to ELA. Is that the same?
I mean, it has translated to that in many situations.
So there's that. And then the frequency and duration of assessments that you've heard loud and clear. So I think that that's at least a major part of the criticism, probably not a complete list, but try to give you a sense of what the issues are. Carol Burris is a noted critic of the Common Core, and you can see the article I referenced. She's a principal at Southside High School, which is in Long Island, and she wrote an article which is, again, you'll hear it resonating. Not only are many topics now taught in a lower grade, what students are required to do to achieve the standard is far more difficult as well. And she gives this as an example, where in 2005, this is about finding the area of a rectangle, so by using graph paper essentially. And it was in grade 4. In 2005, it's been lowered to grade 3. And again, you can see it's very typical. The language used in the Common Core standard is much more concrete language. Right, so there's an example of criticism. I showed this as an example about poor curriculum materials that are coming out. Mr. Sneezek showed another one about a crossword puzzle that wasn't complete. But here's another one where you really can't answer the question. So to me, this is a kind of a fallout of some of that rush to publication. This is another one that I've seen that people are critical of. At the top it says match the picture with the fraction that appears in the shaded part. And they didn't finish it because there's nothing shaded over here. So again, there are curriculum materials that are being put out there that have errors in them? There are, and that is part of that criticism that's out there. So my takeaways, kind of my conclusion, is that the pace of the implementation has been very, very challenging. You've heard that on a number of fronts. In most cases, the content is not new. Like multiplication is multiplication. We're still teaching fractions. We're still teaching multiplication. Some of the things that are new is the level of understanding that students are having to demonstrate. The staircase of complexity has driven curriculum down into lower grades in many cases. That's been very challenging as well. The emphasis on close reading in ELA and the deeper understanding emphasis in mathematics is very challenging for teachers and students. The level of rigor in assessments has increased significantly, and my takeaways is really a work in progress. We work every day to try to get better at teaching the new standards and the new curriculum, and I'll always say that professional development is the key. Highly trained teachers and having them helping us adjust the curriculum as we go forward will be a huge part.
Has the Teacher Center helped in the transition of the
Tremendous. Yes, yes. Yeah, I don't know of any district that provides as much professional development on any number of fronts to do that. Absolutely.
So always, New Hartford has been, and we've always said a million different things, that New Hartford is the district that so many other districts ultimately look to for leadership. So what if we don't? What if we just say, you know what, we were doing okay before the Common Core, before the changes to our curriculum that were mandated by the state. We graduated kids that did incredibly well in college and have gone on to be successful, including our assemblywoman. What would happen?
Well, first thing that would happen is our students would do less well, I believe, in those tests if they're not engaged in the Common Core, but that's what they're being tested on. And up until recently, they were graduation requirements. You weren't going to get out of high school unless you passed the Common Core algebra exam and Common Core English exam.
Refuse the test.
But if we refuse the test and they're backpedaling politically on the Common Core, that, what's the first graduating class that has to meet those standards?
Ninth grade.
Okay, so we have 3 years
I thought
to.
that's been pushed back.
They have to take the test.
Oh.
Okay, so ninth graders have to take the test, but we can continue to push back and say, we're not gonna teach to test. We're gonna teach our kids like we've done. We have a 98% graduation rate history. We're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're having kids having almost nervous breakdowns. Your faculty, your educated faculty are telling you this is wrong. And there's faculty that are teaching other districts. They're telling you it's wrong. What happens? Financially, what happens to our district if they say no?
Well, first of all, I don't think we teach to test. I think we teach to the standards.
But what's in the classroom, the number of hours that these kids are facing, we're teaching to a test. They're not learning, they're not doing the science projects, they're not having, you know,
They are doing science projects, and they are learning.
I haven't seen my kid bring home a single science project in 5th grade.
There are there.
Vince, I guess getting back to Beth's point, and I appreciate your comments, is, so Beth's saying if we unplug, run the risk. In what year is that requirement again? I think it's with 4th graders now when they get up to the senior high level. They will be required.
They have to pass those assessments at that level of rigor that they call what's the term they use? Aspirational measure.
Right, so if we choose to unplug, and by the time those 4th graders got to that level, we would run the risk of doing injustice to our kids because they would not be prepared to pass that. Well, much like if you had to take an SAT test or whatever it is, or a Regents.
You're doing it
Ladies and gentlemen, it's not, I think it's a false debate. What we have here is a false debate. We have one side where, you know, the state is mandating we do this. Okay, great. Beth and Kim, you're both right. It's not an issue of unplugging. It's not an issue of just hollering calf rope, to me. It's an issue of to continue to do whatever we can locally to mitigate the damage to our children. Okay? And now, on the other hand, it's not, again, it's a false debate. On the other hand, we as New Hartford should recognize what is happening to our children in the classroom today with all the issues that we heard here tonight, and we should be advocating for change, for a moratorium. We as a district, as a board, should be unified in aggressive attention to our legislators and to the Board of Regents and to Albany, whoever will listen, as New Hartford, to say, we're doing everything that you're asking us to do. We're doing it to the 100th degree. But we've got some issues with the mental health of our children, and you've got to stop this. So we got to do both. It's not either or. And I don't know why we just don't embrace that fact and go about it.
And it's not just our district. If you listen and read what's going on, it's our state, it's the entire country. There's other states trying to pull out of it. There's a few states that didn't accept it. And I think part of, unless I misunderstood, part of the push to accept it was because you had to tie in some type of evaluation means to evaluate your teachers. Yes, there's some bad teachers in maybe every school district and more in others. But do you tie it to your kids in 3rd grade and through 8th grade to evaluate your teachers? There's got to be a better way.
To Kim's point about the SAT, my firm belief is that if you educate children and you teach them to be intellectually curious and you teach them to ask why in situations and you teach them to love learning, which I'm not sure is what is being accomplished through these standards. I mean, I realize in some cases I'm suggesting that we play chicken with the state. We say, you know what, we're good. We're good. In the hopes that they will back down. And I agree that it has to be, and I've always said that it has to be paired with advocacy, which I think we have been providing. But I don't think there's a half, I'm not sure that there's a half step that we can take. I have a 4th grade son, I have an 8th grade daughter, a 9th grade daughter, and I will say that the math that my son does now is way harder. It's way harder. I mean, it's way harder. I don't know how you half provide relief to the kids. I don't know how we half provide relief to the teachers. I don't know how to half do that. But I'd like to find a way.
Well, make no mistake, my position is that I've been working as hard as I can
I
to
know
try
you
to
have.
implement the
We
Common Core.
appreciate that.
So it's not, I haven't been looking for a half measure.
I
I've
know,
been looking
I know.
for how can we best implement the Common Core and train our teachers and get our kids up to those standards. So-
And we've done that, and kids are pulling their hair out. We keep talking around the issue of kids with migraines, kids stabbing themselves with pencils. My son, who's going back in his shell because he feels less than adequate. We keep going over that. I don't know how, as an administration, as a board, we can sit back any longer and watch that happen and not say something about it. I don't see how we can do it, no matter what the consequence.
And then we're continuing to push our kids, and then they get into, I don't know, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, and we're pushing the AP classes on them. Let them do college when they gotta get to college if we're pushing them this hard.
Are you done?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think great, agree?
Yeah.
Okay, Vince, thank you very much.
Can you switch over?
I do want to thank the teachers and parents for attending tonight. We're going to take all this information and we'll pass it down to the curriculum committee. And we're always, we're always here and we're always accepting whatever information.
Well, I'd like to suggest one thing as far as what Ed's saying is what do we do as a board in a school district? To take a stance and make the state for us to stand up and take notice. Maybe we need to, because I haven't seen a letter come home, even suggesting to parents, if your children, because there's a lot of parents that aren't here tonight, they can't be here, they might be single parents, they're trying to manage the best they can, or for whatever reason they're not here. That if we need to take a stance as a district and say, look, if your children are having any of these type of issues, it may be in the best interest of your child to opt them out of the test. When they see a percentage of 90% of the kids in New Hartford opt out because the parents feel it's a mental health issue or the stress level is so high, we're standing up and we're making a statement to the state to say, we're not going to do this here. We're not going to do this. We're going to cherish our children that we have. We need to do something, and that's what I'm asking you to consider.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You know, as a parent, I approached my daughter's teacher and said, all right, I know there's all sorts of sides on Common Core. Just give me your assessment. Should my daughter take the test? And my daughter's teacher's response was, they've asked us not to say anything about it.
Exactly.
And I rely on my daughter's teacher to tell me what's going on in the classroom and with her progress. And if she's if she's had her hands tied or her mouth gagged as to what she recommends for my daughter, then she's doing both me and my daughter a disservice. So if teachers have a problem with either the Common Core or the test, and they're not allowed to say something, who's going to say something? I was lucky enough to be able to hear a lot of this tonight and have friends and family in the education system throughout the state of New York. But my daughter's teacher is the one that knows the most about how my daughter is going to perform. I need to be able to hear from her.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Vince. We're going to table the technology presentation. I see just on.
Sorry, CJ.
Next time.
We're on to item 4 on the agenda, approval of the minutes, regular meeting 3/4/18, regular meeting.
Good job, Vince. Come on, let's make sure that time.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions, 4 passes 6-0. Item 5, correspondence and communications, Mr. Miller.
One item quickly, Scholar Athlete Team Awards, presenting the facility of the sports team soft distributed
Item 6, board committee reports, budget and finance
27,363.
Yes, budget finance net February 27th, 5 to 10. Probably in order. We went over the second quarter financial budget transfers. Reviewed fund balance projections for the current year. The employee retirement system, figure retirement system projections were also discussed. Expenditure projections through June 30th, 2014 are anticipated to be below appropriations. Cost containment measures are being taken. Revenue projections are slightly above the result of the higher anticipated closing date by the revenues. This amount will review major factors affecting the budget, such as health insurance. District treasurer will also be supplementing the current practice of reviewing individual financial reports on a quarterly basis. With the monthly treasurer reports, they've already been doing it. Property tax levy limit review. We reviewed the allowable tax levy for a simple majority approval for this coming year. We've explained that each year it's called an 8-step formula. So the 2% tax calculated is 2%, part of the 8-step formula. State aid update. This matter reviewed the governor's proposal for state aid for this year. She advised the committee that meeting with local legislators, lobby for the trade of state aid. 3 areas of focus will be the removal of the debt elimination adjustment, reparations, foundation aid, and continuing advocacy for financial relief. Ms. Manless will also be attending a state aid workshop for the next few months. Tax cert update, we reviewed the status of pending cert cases. This includes updates on discontinued claims. And the veteran tax exemption, we reviewed the implications and due to the intricacies of the legislation, we sought legal counsel for guidance. Continue to study and deliberate this topic throughout the year, getting adjourned at 5:50. Then we had so much fun that night. We met again at March 6th at 5 p.m. Probably until 5 o'clock. We discussed the budget and overview provided through the budget discussions on impact affecting the budget, such as repayment system increases, staffing reductions, and building level budgets. These can maintain quality of education programs and explanation on the governor's proposal of state aid. We again reviewed the property tax levy limit review, again as a two-step formula. We had another legal review regarding Attorney Ryan and the St. West Circuit. We adjourned at 5:30. Oh, and we met again, March 19th. We were busy. We met again at March 19th, 5 o'clock. Called to order at 5:05, and yet again we had a budget presentation. The presentation included details on significant factors traded up. And here we had some actual numbers. So the budget presents an increase in spending of 1.5%. This follows a 5-year average budget increase of approximately $470,000. And it's 550. That is all I have.
Thank you, John. CJ&C committee?
We had a meeting on March 5th. We reviewed the safety grant award. Amanda notified the committee the district submitted an application for the 2014 School Safety Excellence Award program sponsored by Utica National. The winners will be announced by March 31st. We reviewed the bus proposition language. Mrs. Mandel reviewed with the committee the notice of the public hearing on the budget vote, and the annual election. Includes the bus proposition, legal notice, and the ballot language presented to the Board of Education for approval this evening. We also reviewed the 13-14 goals that were established by the BG&T committee, reviewed the safety measures that were implemented, such as increased camera coverage, and some revised transportation drop-off procedures were addressed. That meeting was adjourned at 12:55. We also had so much fun, we met again. Called the meeting to order at 12:05. Dr. Libertino provided a summary of the incident involving an elementary student that transpired at the Bradley Complex. He also reviewed the newly implemented safety measures to enhance security that have been put into place. I should note also that Officer Coburn, our SRO, and Lieutenant O'Neill were also present at this meeting. The committee and the New Hartford Police Department members present discussed several items such as the need for additional assistance with safety coordination, improved electronic communication from elementary schools such as parent email distribution lists, promoting a culture of safety, integration of safety awareness in monthly newsletters and faculty meetings, character education, also potentially integrating that into the character education curriculum, exploring the possibility of contracting with the New Hartford Police Department for a security office that would serve as a point person for safety, and proposing an action implementation plan provided to the district, currently waiting for the proposal from the New Hartford Police Department. That meeting was adjourned at 1:30.
Thank you, Beth. Item 7, new business. A, reading of policies and regulations.
Following policies, procedures are presented for the first reading to the report out of the last meeting. That will be presenting each policy for the first reading.
I ask everybody to retain any questions because they'll be coming up again on the next agenda. Okay, 7B, personnel appointments, substitute teachers.
Bob, these are the marked up copies, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It should include all the changes that the policy will be.
All right, great, thanks.
It is recommended the following teacher be appointed to the per diem substitute teacher list pending satisfactory clearance for employment by the State Education Department. Michael Morale, certified in Spanish, grade 7 through 12.
Second. Thank you, Paul. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes 6-0. B, substitute teacher aide, substitute school monitor, substitute office specialist.
It is recommended that Melissa Cole be appointed to the substitute positions of Teacher Aide 1, School Monitor, and Office Specialist 1, effective March 25th, 2014, pending satisfactory clearance for employment by the State Education Department.
Motion? Approved. Thank you, Brad. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? B passes 6-0. Item C, coaches.
It is recommended that the following coaches be appointed to the spring 2014 sports season. Kathy Clark, head JV softball. Mark Stoppenbeck, head modified softball. Chris Moran, volunteer baseball.
Thank you, Jim. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Yeah, I'm going to abstain only because my daughter is currently trying out for the modified softball team.
Thank you, Beth. So C will pass 5-0-1. 7-2, unpaid leave of absence. A, speech and language pathology.
Just a quick thing, just a question. I didn't even realize this, but so what have we been doing until now with the softball team? Have they been practicing and trying out? Who's been coaching?
I actually have it, they actually started
today.
today
Go ahead.
Okay.
in the Perry Gymnasium, first day of tryouts. I was with Coach Steppenbeck.
But they were under the supervision of the head coach, Cunningham, Mr. Steppenbeck was after him.
Okay.
2, unpaid leave of absence.
It is recommended that an unpaid leave of absence for child rearing purposes be granted to Karen Davis, beginning at the end of her disability period through June 30th, 2016.
Thank you, Beth. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ed. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 2A, 7-2A passes 6-0. B, DP, teacher aide.
It is recommended that an unpaid leave of absence for child-rearing purposes be granted to Melissa Gentile, beginning at the end of her disability period through June 30th, 2014.
Motion? Thank you, John. Second? Thank you, Paul. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? B passes 6-0. Item C, resolution of condolence.
Board of Education of the New Hartford Central School District records with sorrow the passing of former typist Lena Green. Resolved that the Board of Education expresses its sincere sympathy to the family of Lena Green, and that this resolution be spread upon the records of the district and a copy sent to the family. Item 2, Board of Education of the New Hartford Central School District records with sorrow the passing of Network Administrator Ivan Rankins. Resolved that the Board of Education express its sincere sympathy to the family of Ivan Rankins, and that this resolution be spread upon the records of the district and a copy sent to the family. Item 3, the Board of Education of the New Hartford Central School District records with sorrow the passing of former teacher Eleanor Stevenson. Resolved that the Board of Education express its sincere sympathy to the family of Eleanor Stevenson, and that this resolution be spread upon the records of the district and a copy sent to the family.
Thank you. Jim, second? Second. Thank you, Brad. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? C, 1, 2, and 3 passes 6-0. 7D, resolution of bus purchase.
It is recommended that the school bus proposition be approved for submittal to the voters on May 20th, 2014. This proposition authorizes the purchase of school buses according to the district's school bus replacement schedule.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Thank you, Ed. Discussion? All those in favor?
Just one point of the buses are on a schedule of a 10-year maintenance. It's a very difficult thing for voters to see, $430,000 on the proposition. It is, however, a schedule of 10 years mileage, and it's important to note that it costs more money to maintain an older bus than it does to get a new one. So just a point.
Thank you.
Should we try to explain just what we said in the newsletter, the budget newsletter that goes out?
That's
Thank you.
a great point, yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? D passes 6-0. E, Committee on Special Education.
The recommendations from the Committee on Special Education's meeting of February 25th and March 4th of 2014 are presented for approval.
Motion? Thank you, Jim. Second?
Second.
Discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 6-0. Lee, that was John that motioned that, I'm sorry, first, John.
Oh, okay, I was giving John and him. Yeah, John and Paul.
Yep, thank you. Item F, Treasurer's Report.
It is recommended that the treasurer's reports for October, November, and December 2013 be accepted.
Thank you, Jim. Second?
Second.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Beth. Discussion?
Yeah. Somebody please tell me why I have to vote on a treasurer's report 6 months ago when under the Commissioner's Regulations 170.2, I am to vote on that once a month.
No, I think it's just been provided once a month.
No, no, it has to be approved. I took the class, I've spread that message to both the business manager and to you, John, and I don't see any change to comply with the New York State Education Department's audit department, who says that it's absolutely true that we must see a treasurer's report once a month and vote on it. And also NYSBA also said that. And now, hang on, John, hang on, treasurer's reports that I get on Friday from 6 months ago, how am I supposed to do my fiduciary duty over the weekend for reports that should have been given to me, at least one should have been given to me 5 months ago? I don't know how I can perform my duty and look through this stuff and look at it the way I'm supposed to under the time frame and under the conditions that we're getting them. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll let Mary speak a little bit about this, but first of all, your comments were reviewed by the Finance Committee, and even though our auditors and our attorneys both said that our current practices were fine, because we were doing treasury reports anyway, as I reported out at the Finance meeting minutes, we are going to be providing the report every month. So that is...
Today's March, January started, and by the way, it doesn't matter what our auditor says, it doesn't matter what the attorney says, what matters is the purveyor of the regulation, which is the New York State Department, and in their audit of education, in their audits, as well as NISBA. So auditors can be wrong, attorneys can be wrong, and it's fine that we recognize that there's an issue and that we're going to change it, but we haven't changed it. I'm not looking at January's today, I'm looking at October's.
What you're looking at, I believe, is quarterlies from last quarter that we have to take action on. And going forward, we're going to be provided on a monthly basis. The treasurer's report, it doesn't have to be, no action has to be taken, this has to be reported to the board.
No, it has to, okay, it has to be reviewed and accepted by the board.
No, it has to be provided to the board.
And it was, the January reports,
Right.
which are timely, were provided to you on Friday.
Yeah, so there's no action that has to be taken, it's just that they're provided to the board.
Then why are we taking action on these?
Because we have to take
Quarterly
action on a
revision,
quarterly basis.
It's right in the regulations.
I'm gonna, no, John, I disagree. I disagree. The action, if we're gonna approve something, we're gonna approve something, and that the report has to be given monthly, that we approve it monthly, not quarterly. And again, how can I possibly know 6 months ago, over the weekend, look at these statements and possibly have enough information to vote for the acceptance of this?
And it's your prerogative not to vote for them when we take action tonight. We take action on a quarterly basis as per the regulation, and we're now going to be provided, for informational purposes, the monthly reports. And again, there's a lag time because the bank statement has to come, it has to be reviewed and then submitted, so it's not as if you're going to get January's treasurer report on February 10th. And so that was.
Should get it in February, right?
I think we got counsel up to 45 days, up to 45 days to provide it. And so that's the process going forward. So anyway, do you have anything to add?
For everything you said is absolutely right on, and you received January's in the Friday letter, because it was the first Friday letter since the January, and in the minutes it reflects the 45 days, that up to 45 days that we need to prepare those. Some months, maybe 30 days. It depends on when the bank statements come in and when it falls on when you receive reports as a board of education. That's what that.
Okay.
So you did receive January.
Okay.
And you'll receive February. And it's accepted. Accepted.
Thank you, so let's move on here. So thank you, Ed, for your comments. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? Act passes 5-1-0. Item G, revenue and expense reports.
It is recommended that the revenue and expense reports for October, November, and December of 2013 be accepted.
Motion? Thank you, Beth. Second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? G passes 6-0. Item H, budget transfers.
It is recommended that the December 31st, 2013 budget transfers be approved.
Motion? Thank you, Beth. Second? Thank you, Paul. Discussion?
Same issues with budget transfers. The board is to review budget transfers in the 45 days, I guess, when they are made, and not 6 months or 3 months or 4 months prior.
Again, same responses that provided on a monthly basis and take action for regulations.
Well, no, they're going to be provided monthly, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? 5-0-1. H. I, vote, Board of Voter Registration.
It is recommended that the following persons be appointed to the 2014-2015 Board of Voter Registration: Sylvia Carlo, Elizabeth Pyle, and Ellie Jones.
Thank you, Jim. Second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I passes 6-0-0. Item J, voter registration dates 2014.
The The following dates and locations are recommended for voter registration for the May 20th, 2014 annual budget vote. Thursday, May 8th, 2014, from 4 to 7 p.m. in the high school lobby. Saturday, May 10th, 2014, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the high school lobby. And Tuesday, May 13th, 2014, from 4 to 7 p.m. in the high school lobby.
Motion? Thank you, Paul. Second? Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? J passes 600. K, 2014-15 school calendar year. Calendars.
It is recommended that the 2014-2015 school calendar be adopted.
Motion? Thank you, Jim. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Discussion?
Do we know, or do we have the same issue as last year with Rosh Hashanah?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? K passes 600. L, declaration of surplus items.
It is recommended that the Board of Education declare the following as a surplus item for disposal. The RCA speaker system set.
Motion?
Move.
Second?
I mean, we can't, second.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Discussion?
We can't get anything for it.
The original cost was approximately $200.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? L passes 600. Could be an antique. M, recommendation to establish club.
It is recommended that a common cook club be established at Perry Junior High School according to policy 6101, introduction of extracurricular activities in the school system.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Beth. Discussion?
Yes. Dr. Levitino?
Dr. Levitino?
Please explain this.
Oh, good evening, everyone. This is a club that's actually we've been running for the last 4 or 5 years. Our school social worker has been governing it, volunteering to govern it. It really was born as a result of our work with the Dignity Act coordinator, Jody Warren from the Oneida BOCES, where we got her input and guidance on what can we do, an anti-bullying campaign, part of the DASA Act. To be honest, at that time, we were having, 4 or 5 years ago, some issues with school bullying, which now are non-existent, very minimal. We've taken care of it as a result of this club. These kids it's open to all 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. They're somewhat of a diverse group. They focus in on digital arts or graphic representation. These are the students who have an extreme interest in technology, and I see them as future career technical students, that type of student down the road. It's crowded. It has anywhere between 15 to 40 students. They meet every other week. And frankly, from being a student and kid advocate, it's well worth it.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Club is established 600.
Who said Mrs. Porter, like a thank you note? I mean, she's been volunteering since 2000, she's retiring, and you give her something. It just seems like some recognition to say, good job, you did this on your own. Is that possible?
I thank her every day.
Item 8, other business.
Yes, I have 3 items for executive session. 2 of them pertain to the employment history of a particular person or persons. And the last item regarding collective negotiations. I'd like to invite.
I have 2 items for regular business, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but.
Yeah, it's okay. Let me just finish that, and then you can vote on it. And then I'd also like to invite the attorney to vote for that as well.
Sorry. One item would be that Mr. McNair handed out an invitation this evening. I'm sure none of us had time to read it. I would like to make sure it's on next week's agenda, so we can read it between now and then, and then we can discuss it. Well, the letter was an invitation, right?
It was an invitation, it's not a letter.
Or whatever it is. Okay, 2 pages.
Should that be discussed in the curriculum committee meeting first and then brought before the board?
Well, I mean, I'm confused. Is it just that the board as a whole says, yes, we're members of the task force, or is it individual board members?
Since he invited the whole board,
Right.
I'd like the whole board to discuss it.
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't invite just the committee, he invited everyone.
Right.
No, I know, but I didn't know if there was, if he was looking for the board to say, yes, the board is joining, can we have a representative?
No, I think they're looking for board representation on the task force.
You could ask me if you want.
Yeah.
I'm sitting right here,
Yeah.
and if you don't want to ask me, that's okay too. You can just take it to this. Parents would love to continue the dialogue. And that could happen wherever, whenever the board wants.
I've been to every meeting as a parent.
Is there any, for me, it's hard at night to come like at 6 or 7. Is there any thought to changing the time to like?
I am amenable to whatever you want to do. I think it's tough to meet everybody's schedule, as you guys all
I
know.
know.
But, you know, we've had people, it hasn't been the same through every time. And I think that's the benefit of someone's.
I'd like to entertain a motion to, right now, under business, make a motion to have board representation on the parent-teacher task force.
I'd like to have it discussed in the curriculum committee.
I'd like to read it and then next week put it on the agenda.
Well, that's not discussion. I've made a motion.
Okay.
Does anybody second it?
I'd say.
Great. All right, discussion. The task force has asked us on several occasions regarding our involvement on the parent and teacher task force. We elected to send administration to it and not board representation, and then we pulled back from it. I strongly recommend, in order to keep in tune with what was said here tonight, I strongly recommend that this board appoints at least one individual to represent the board on the task force.
What board member was originally on it and he pulled back?
Nobody.
Yeah.
It was administration.
No.
It was.
Three of us attended.
No, we attended, but we didn't attend as board. The board, the official board that the president nominated was Mr. Condro and Mr. Hyde. There was never board
But
representation.
you just said we pulled back. So
We
board
pulled
was officially-
Mr. Hyde and,
Excuse me, you said a board pulled back the board members and there was no board member there.
I'm sorry, the board pulled back our representation because they were sent in our stead.
I don't remember making a motion to pull back there.
I thought it was more just board, like I had responded saying I wanted to get on the mailing list, but I wasn't able to make it, because again, it's hard. But I thought it was more just getting board members involved, not an official board representative, but having board members knowing what's going on, just like any other.
We were given an email by the president that said the representation that we are sending is Mr. Hyde and Mr. Condro. And that's what was sent. And then they were no longer, after the second meeting, a part of the task force.
And that's what was meant when you said.
So
board.
I was assuming that because of the email, that they were nominated by the president to be our representatives. And that's what the email said.
Because I was kind of confused when you were saying the board was no longer involved. I wasn't sure what that meant.
That was my understanding when I talked to Mr. Condro, was that the board felt like they had heard what they needed to hear, and that Mr. Condro and Mr. Hyde were going to work on addressing concerns with assessment. And so, I'm just sharing what I know. People are disappointed. We want a conversation.
And I think we addressed a letter back to you, Jamie, and said that we have to listen to your report out on your task force.
I know, we want a conversation.
No, and I would have liked to have that conversation with our board. Instead, it's just directly from the president to nominate these two fine gentlemen and then unilaterally again pull them off. And so for the first time, there's a motion on the table to have board representation on the parent-teacher task force.
Again, from my point or perspective, I'd like to have further discussion from the curriculum committee on the same topic as we discussed with the resolution that went back to committee. I don't think there's enough information information on the table right now to make that decision or to cast a vote.
Okay, again, I disagree. The people that were discussing the plight of their children tonight is enough information for me to vote right now for one of us to be on that task force.
Now I want to have a full board discussion on it. So what happened? Well, first I was talking about presenting it next week, take this letter home, think about it, come back
We
next
had a
week
meeting
and
on
have a
Tuesday.
discussion.
Right, we had a meeting on April 1st.
That's what I'm saying.
Jamie, what is the next meeting?
Kim, I think
We haven't scheduled one yet, 'cause we would love to have you included.
There's a
And so
motion
we're
on the
willing to
floor.
make, I'm sure the parents and teachers are willing to make their schedules flexible to include you.
Okay, thank you, Rita, for that clarification. There's a motion on well, there's a motion on the table. Does the board want to send representation to, as a board member, not as a parent, to the task force? Okay? So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'm
I'm
gonna
abstaining
abstain, I'm
until
abstaining
discussion's
because
done.
I don't have enough information from our curriculum superintendent or nor my curriculum team to make that decision. I have to totally understand the concerns of the community, but I don't feel like I have enough information to make that vote.
That's good, but your charge now is to appoint somebody because we voted on it and it's been passed.
Okay?
I guess my only advice or 2 cents to whoever the board member is that's going to be our representative. Sometimes it's hard to take the parent hat off and to have the board hat on, to be mindful of that, you know, I would think the board's representative's main goal of these things would be to listen, to understand the concerns and try to make it so, well, what can we do to help, you know? Because one of the dangers is that these groups can get, sometimes you can get into areas that really is not appropriate for a board to be taking action on. So I think we're more,
I think Mr. McNeil understands that no
Yeah.
single board member is the board as a whole, and it's certainly not.
Right,
But I
just
think it
the-
is important for us to listen and bring information back to the board.
I think the invitation went to everybody because the conversation needs to involve everybody. And so when I say conversation, I mean it. That's mostly what happened at our first 2 task force meetings, was conversation. There was no agenda, there was no steering towards any one thing. I think if you ask anybody who was at the first task force meeting, we spent the first hour talking about New Hartford strengths because there are so many. And that's where you focus on your strengths to figure out how to solve the problems that we have. And if you didn't get it, you have problems. You can't solve them without a conversation. That's all we're asking for.
and I absolutely agree, and like I said, I was thrilled that there were so many people here to talk about curriculum, because we talk about it a lot. It's usually just Catherine in the front row, and it's, you know, so there's plenty of seats available if any of you guys want to come back and chat, because we're, just like you guys are always talking about it, we're always talking about it too.
May I say something? I don't know if it's appropriate. Because I sat and, I'm gonna get emotional. I sat here and watched all these people come and talk to you with heartfelt issues and problems. And while I appreciated the personal comments of Mr. Jadon, and Mr. Stevens, and Mrs. Sox, and Mr. Flemma, there was no blanket statement for a captive audience of concerned taxpayers, parents, and teachers, mostly parents, from the board. There was nothing except, thank you all for attending, and it was time to move on. I find that to be so disheartening to a hugely group of people who are just looking to be heard, and I felt like they were brushed off, and by that I felt like I was brushed off.
Thank you very much, because I'm sitting here as a taxpayer, pouring my heart out, as everybody else did, the concerns of our children that we see every single night. Some of you on the board don't have kids in the midst of it right now, and I think it's very difficult for you to understand. And I absolutely agree with her. I think it's fun. I feel I'm walking away with it. It's falling on deaf ears on this board right now.
And I
I mean, I'm opting my
I'm
kids
sorry.
out. My letter's
Yeah.
going in tomorrow to opting out. My kids will not take the test. I think as a stance, you need to provide the option to parents to be knowledgeable that they have that option. In the newspaper article that was just in the paper this week at the OD, there were some comments from other school districts stating there really wasn't an option for parents to opt out. That's not true. And that the children would be marked with a 0. That's not true. They will be marked as a refusal. So I think that information needs to be spelled out, to be honest and upfront and transparent to the parents that are entrusting their children to this school board and to this school. We all, maybe some of us grew up here, we're here, and others moved here because of the high standards that the school district has. And I think we're failing the parents and the children, and you're certainly failing your faculty.
There are many times when
I
you...
think what the board is trying to figure out is what is our next step.
The next step would be send a letter to the parents and state, if your children are having these issues, you have the right to make a decision to opt your child out of the exam. My one son gets double time. If he's going to get an hour and a half, a normal kid gets an hour and a half for a test, do I want him sitting there 3 hours struggling to try and finish that test? Absolutely not. I don't even want my kids that can do it in the hour and a half time frame. There are parents out there that don't know they have an option. That's what I'm saying.
And there are many times when you ask me, you know, what do you think, what would be helpful? Just a positive response, like, we hear you. Something impassioned, like, we hear you. And we're going to do something about it, even if you don't know what it is yet. But we want to do something, we're going to do something, and please be patient with us. But it was just so abrupt that I found that to be almost embarrassing.
I was at the last February meeting, and you were asking, what can we do? And I took away some thoughts too. What can we do more to help these kids? And Kim, you had suggested, well, maybe we need to have them stay after school. And I thought, initially I thought, well, some kids, they can't handle it. They've had a long enough day. But I walked away and I thought, you know what? There need to be options, I think. Some kids, it might fit in their schedule. They maybe are staying at the Y program anyways, and they're here after school. And that might be the best venue for them to get extra help after school. I had suggested information that the Utica School District had their winter break, and kids that needed extra help. A letter went home to the parents. They were suggested your kid would benefit from additional help. Teachers are going to be available. Not every teacher is going away on their spring break. I suggested it for the April break coming up. A couple weeks later is the test. I walked away thinking that all of you looked at me like I had 3 heads. Maybe some other kids will benefit from Saturday morning school that Utica offers. If the Utica School District, which is so financially strapped, can offer these type of programs, why can't we here? If we're truly trying to help our children and help them achieve to these standards, we need to make multiple options available. Maybe we do the after school program, maybe we do a Saturday morning school program, and maybe we offer the April break if these kids are going to take these tests. And if this is what we expect, when you heard all these parents and teachers sitting there getting ill, physically and mentally ill, these kids are getting, as well as your staff.
Maybe we send a board member to a task force meeting that I've been to every single time, but maybe we get some representative there and start listening.
Well, if they didn't listen tonight, I don't see how they're going to really listen and feel much differently at the task force meeting, Ed, to be honest with you. I think the board needs to take some action. You need to stand up. This is New Hartford. We are going to lead the way. There are teachers that have been at the task force meeting that their children go to school here, they teach in other districts, and those teachers are asking them, what's New Hartford doing?
And thank you. And Catherine, it isn't, if we came across as cold, I'll apologize for myself. John gave some passionate input, Beth did. Totally, I don't think anybody on this board would walk away and diminish what happened here tonight. I don't think that's it at all. But I do think, as Jim had stated, we've made concerted efforts. To say that we've done nothing is not fair either. And again, this board didn't create the standard, okay? So I think we've come back to you again, and I'll say to you, because you've been to all of our meetings, time and time again. How many times have we talked about this subject? How many times have we said, what can we do to help? So if the feeling was, and again, we gave everybody the opportunity over an hour and a half tonight to talk. It wasn't like we said, no, we're gonna cut it off at 5 minutes. We gave everybody the opportunity to say what they needed to say. again, you know, we just voted on a proposition from Ed. Again, it's not a plug-and-play solution. I don't think anybody's sitting here saying that it's an easy fix. Even to you, Jamie, we came back and said, we'd be happy to listen. Again, we're not on deaf ears. We'd be happy to listen and entertain you coming in and presenting to us what the task force came up with. What is your recommendation? Get together as a collective team. What is a recommendation? So what we just decided, we're gonna send a board representation. If we wanna vote on a member, if somebody's willing to volunteer, if we need to vote on it, Beth is being a parent and a board member is volunteering to attend. She will represent the board at your next task force meeting.
And I'll volunteer too, because Beth has commitments I can always.
Okay. Is that fair? And you are welcome here, and I want to say this, you are welcome to come and attend our meetings. Every meeting, we have an open forum to, you know, to come and outbrief us on what you've accomplished in your task force.
Sure,
Okay.
and I totally appreciate that. You can't do it without you. That's my whole point. You can't do it without you. So thank you. Thank you so much for the people that attended. Thank you for so much for listening tonight. And thank you so much for your willingness to continue to participate, because if we work together, good things will happen. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, yeah, we appreciate it.
As an individual board member, I would think, but we don't have all the information, the district opt out, completely out of testing, but that might not be the right move.
Well, the conversation is where you figure out what is next. You said it, Jim. You said, well, what do we do next? And you're right, it's not plug and play, Kim. We don't know what we do next, but we can't figure it out if you're there and we're here. That was the whole purpose of that task force.
And Jamie, I'll explain my vote to you so you can go. What my fear is that without teaching the Common Core, is that it happens in the fourth graders that get to the senior high school, and we look backwards and say in 8 years, and they're not gonna pass, and then they fail. Then we don't have the opportunity. It's almost like homeschooling. You can't undo. That's
Right.
my fear. We can't undo.
And you can't undo what you're doing to our kids.
I understand it. It's a catch-22 to Ed's point and to Beth's point. Again, there is no easy solution. But do you say to a fourth grader, we're gonna unplug, and oh, by the way, we hope we can pass that test in 12th grade, but we're just gonna not go there? You know.
Let's have the conversation.
Yeah.
Let's have the conversation.
I agree. Okay.
It's a long meeting, but that is the conversation we have to have. You got it. That's the one.
My concern as a parent, we're sitting here and it's almost April, and the whole school year has gone by, and what's gonna happen next school year? And I'm asking, at least for you to consider, sending out some information to the parents that are uninformed, that are unable to come to these task force meetings, to the Board of Ed meetings, to PTA meetings, etc. Send out something. We get how many sheets of paper come home with our kids' folders every single day? I think something as far as clear and transparent can be sent home to parents to make them fully aware of what their options are for their children. It's their right to make their decision.
I just want to say two things. First of all, Catherine, I've known you a long time. I don't want you to ever think for a minute that we didn't hear what you were saying, that we don't take it. I take it very personally. I have 3 children in these school districts. Their personal stories are not me to tell in a public forum. Neither my 4th grader nor my 8th grader will be taking the state tests. I hear what you're saying. I think that the time is right for New Hartford to take a leadership role. We don't, the very process by which the board works, we couldn't agree on all what to eat for lunch probably right now. But so we take a little bit of time to deliberate what we say publicly as a body. We make a statement, we deliberate about that. But I don't think there's anybody here who thought, well, that's over, we're good. I think everybody here is thinking, and some of the conversations that I was having, well, unfortunately, with Condro stuff, were about just some of those questions. What can we do? Where can we go? What are our options? What type of latitude does the board have? What type of latitude does the district have? What are the potential consequences? And I think a lot of those questions really don't even have concrete answers. But I think that those are things that we need to explore, as Jamie said, in partnership to decide this is the appropriate road for New Hartford to take. So I'm sorry that what I know many of us are feeling wasn't appropriately conveyed this evening. But I also don't want you to walk out of this room and think that we're just gonna move on to the next item in the agenda and not give this any more thought, because that is not at all the case.
Well, and, you know, the other thing that I think sometimes, I think the questions change, because, you know, I think, or at least from my vantage point, I felt like through all the Common Core discussions, Hartford has been a leader, but to a different question. How do you deal with the modules? Is it just plug and play? We have been leading in Hartfordizing, in training, in adapting. And so I think that's where sometimes, if you sensed a little bit of, maybe we're not leading, because we felt like we have been leading to that question. Now there's a different question or a different problem that we're talking about. And that one, admittedly, really hasn't been focused on, because in large part, it's been such a fire drill trying to lead and get the curriculum and everything put together. Does that make sense to you guys?
Well, I think the question has been, I don't think that there's any question that as well as you can implement the Common Core, and has been said earlier, he's doing his darndest to implement the core the best way that we can. I think New Hartford has done that. I think New Hartford has implemented a flawed core the best way that we can. And I think what John is saying is that the question has changed. The question is, not what is it that we're implementing, because I think we know, but I think we have I don't think we knew in September as much as we know now as to the impact. Because, and I could say for my own child who's in 4th grade, in 3rd grade, it was all right. In 4th grade, it's getting his butt kicked. My 8th and 9th graders are, insofar as they're trying to prepare for the algebra exams and this exam, my daughter is in algebra prep or whatever, so she won't take it until next year. I mean, she's doomed. She's doomed. If somebody, I mean, she's gonna have a hard time. She's gonna have a hard time. God, she's gonna have a hard time. And so I appreciate that, and I think his point is correct in that we have not sat back. We have addressed the concerns of implementing the core, but the question now is, what is it we're working so hard to implement, and is that the right choice for the district?
I guess my takeaway from that is, I absolutely agree. You all have worked tremendously hard in spite of that. But in spite of all these modifications that New Hartford has taken, it's still not enough.
Yeah. But I think that strengthens our argument, because we didn't say in September, you know what, we're not doing that. I think we can say as New Hartford, we have every resource available to us. We have probably, I would put Vince up against any assistant superintendent of curriculum. I would put our teaching staff up against any teaching staff. And yet our students still struggle. So I think that's where we are. So I don't want you to feel like we've said, well, we'll give a little more money. I mean, I think we have done everything that we can do to implement this in the most exemplary way possible, which is New Hartford's way. I mean, Vince always talks about this is an exemplar of this, this is an exemplar of this. We've always worked hard to set a standard and then make sure that we implement that standard consistently across the district. And I think we have done that, and even, as we said before, with the very best resources at our disposal, with parents who are more engaged than I would argue, in any district. Teachers, I mean, just phenomenal staff, phenomenal administration. We're still struggling. And
phenomenal parents.
Phenomenal parents.
Thank you.
And incredible children. Incredible children. I think that.
Am I still out of line asking, is there something that can be said to parents that aren't able to attend these venues? To let them know what their options are. If your kid is in these particular grades and you feel this test, which will last, how many minutes it's gonna last, if you feel this is inappropriate for your child, you do have the right to opt out.
And I think that's the question that we're gonna be asking ourselves.
But you don't have that much time, because the tests are coming in what, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think they have the visual. You're mandated to give those
It is your
tests.
job to prepare kids for those tests. It is our job as teachers to administer those tests. It is the community's job to ask the value of those tests. And that is the question that's before you, is if that's what's causing these problems, can't we take a step back and look at it and say, if there's value, okay, well, what's the cost? You know, nobody looks at the cost. The cost is what you saw tonight. That's the price we're paying for rigor, for accountability, for data-driven instruction. All the things that we're looking at and saying, but if we just take that out, we're paying the cost right now. My kids are paying the cost. That's why you see so much emotion.
Well, like I said, it strengthens the argument as time goes on. We've done all we can to make it work, and it's still not working.
I just don't, I don't hear anybody, not one teacher, not one parent really saying that we haven't done everything that we could. You know what I mean? I mean, we take it that way. I don't know why we do, but I don't hear that. What I hear is, help us outside of this district. Help us get the message out that despite these Herculean efforts, we got kids that are suffering.
Bob, don't you go to all this? Isn't there already lobbying going on? I know the School Boards Association came out against it. I know that's,
There's a lot of going on right now for state aid.
But I think the point is made that I think it's appropriate, and again, we have to determine exactly how that is put specifically for New Hartford to stand up and take a leadership role in this and make a statement. I mean, that is appropriate. I don't think it's something we're gonna craft in the next 5 minutes, but I think that it's something that we'll look
New
forward to.
Hartfordized the testing.
No, the state tests it. We can't even get a copy of the test.
Have we ever in our history not presented the state test?
Well, I don't think ever in our history there's been a situation like this.
Okay. I think we're going to, you know, to meet your needs, to meet the task force, Beth is volunteer, we've got the motion on the file. We'll expect Beth to outbrief at least the curriculum committee and then the full board.
I can outbrief the full board.
Okay.
We will have to have a motion to appoint Beth.
Okay, can I have a motion to appoint Beth to the
I don't
task
know,
force?
Paul mentioned if we want to be.
As an alternate, and Paul as an alternate?
And that would be as board representative and parent teacher task force.
Correct.
So we need a motion and second.
Move.
Thank you, Jim. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Jack. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? It passes 6-0. Okay, can I have a motion to go?
I have one
Wait,
more.
wait, one more.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Paul, what do you got now? It's been the last week and a half from John, we got Kim's letter that was going to the OD. And it was you with Lisa, and you're asked to look it over if you have any questions, get back to you. The bottom of the letter is signed by you with President New Hartford School District, or School Board, and your address. You sent out 3 letters, one to Mr. McNair, one to Mrs. Dowling, one to Mrs. Molger, with school board letterhead on it, which was my name on it and everybody else's name on it. And we were never asked to read these letters. I'm just asking that from now on, if my name is on the letterhead, I would like to read the letter.
Prior to it going out.
Yes, please.
Just a correction, Paul, we were not asked to review this letter that went to the OD. When John sent us the letter, it had already been sent that day.
If you have any questions or comments regarding this letter?
Yeah, but.
It was already gone?
It was already gone, yeah, the email said it was already gone.
Okay. Well, still, we never got a chance to question these, so if we know anything, that's how I feel. I don't know if anybody else.
Bob, I'm not sure what the past practice has been, as far as.
I'm not sure.
I'm just asking about the past practice addressing prior. Okay, well, included in the packet. Okay, point, yep, no problem. Okay, can I have a motion to go into executive session in 5 minutes? And I'd like to invite, who else moved? Paul and Beth? Paul and Jim? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good job, Steve.